thing sounds nice.
Oh, it's sweet, isn't it?
Yeah. Hi, welcome to the shop and a whole new season of Horsepower TV.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that, hey, we're already getting started on our 5th season of high-performance how-tos, shiny sheet metal, and that lead-foot lifestyle.
We're going to get things going today with a pair of ponies that represent 35 years of Mustang muscle.
And the latest is this Cobra R model built by the Special Vehicles team in very limited numbers. 300 to be exact. And just like all the previous R models, well, this one's race ready right off the assembly line. To get it around the track, the R model uses a special 32-valve dual overhead cam 5.4-liter modular V8 that cranks out 385 horsepower and matches it with 385 foot-pounds of torque. Now, because of this massive intake, the SV team had to come up with a unique hood to hide it all.
Well, my 65 Fastback here isn't a horse of a different color exactly, but it does have a different attitude. We're building it up as a pro touring pony, and so far we've installed a total control rack and pinion steering, disc brakes, coilover front suspension before adding these 5-spoke Haliburns mounted on BFG rubber.
Oh, and don't forget that Be Cool radiator, electric fans, and the Hurst shifter. Now, today we're going to keep the project going by bolting in a complete DTS 9-inch rear end, and soon you'll see why. But the first step is to set up our center section.
Now, let me show you why the old one has to go. This housing here apparently came out of a full-size Ford. In fact, you can check out here where somebody cut off the brackets. Then someone added axle tubes from a Mustang to make it work with the original springs. Now, the problem with this whole setup is you can never trust the integrity, especially with these butt wells, and who knows what's inside of it. Now, after we get rid of this drive shaft, we get the car up on jack stands and remove the U-bolts and the shocks.
Here's everything that we need to set up that center section. Now, we're going to start with a strange nodular carrier and one of their billet yokes done for strength purposes, and that's because the stock Ford piece will only handle about 500 horsepower, and we'll probably see every bit of that with the engine swap that we got planned for later on. Now, we're going to finish filling that center section with a set of 350 gears and an ARB air locker differential. Now, check this out. It gets its air from this compressor to lock up that differential every time we need maximum traction. It's connected through the differential housing with this hose, and it connects right here, and the whole deal is controlled with a couple of rocker switches that we'll mount inside the car later on.
Hey, what are you going to do with this thing? I don't know. You think there's anything inside we can salvage?
Let's set it down over here and get to that later.
All right.
Well, I've already pressed the carrier bearings onto the differential and torqued the ring gear bolts down to 75 foot-pounds. Now, make sure that you use these Allen head bolts that come with the locker, since there isn't room here for a hex head bolt. Oh, and while I was at it, I also pressed the pinion bearing onto the pinion shaft. Well, now we can set up the pinion support by first dropping in the head bearing and driving in the pinion seal. We're using this spacer and shims rather than the crush sleeve. Now, you adjust the pinion preload by adding or subtracting shims, so you get about 20 inch-pounds of rotational drag once this pinion nut is tight. Now, it may take several attempts to get it right. To check out rotational drag, we use this inch-pound torque wrench.
Those old springs are really sagging after 36 years, so while Chuck adjusts that pinion drag over there, I'm going to swap them out for these new springs we got from Eaton. They'll give us a 1.5-inch drop in the rear to match that lowered front end, and we also got the installation kit, which includes urethane spring pads, shackles and bushings, plus through bolts and U-bolts. Now, while I get this Mustang ready for that new rear end, why don't you keep yours right where it is, because we'll be back to finish up this project right after this.
Hey, welcome back to the shop and our rear end swap into Joe's 65 Mustang. Now, while you were gone, I went ahead and finished setting the preload on our pinion, so now we're ready for our third pinion bearing and the retainer. Once that's done, the pinion and support assembly are ready to be bolted to the carrier. Now, Ford uses shims like these to adjust the pinion depth, and experience tells us that a 10,000 shim is a good starting point. Of course, the final shim thickness will be determined once we run our test pattern. After removing the carrier cap and the spanner nut, we're ready to drop in our differential. There we go. Now, if you're using new bearings like we are, here's a trick way to take care of both your backlash and your preload at the same time. Reinstall the spanner nut and the carrier cap, plus the retainer bracket for the locker's air fitting. Zero out your backlash by adjusting both spanner nuts until you have zero clearance at the pinion and the ring gear still spins freely. Now, we've gone ahead and mounted it on this engine stand to give us improved access and better stability. After mounting your dial indicator, tighten the spanner nut furthest away from the ring gear to get 6 to 8 thousandths backlash. Right on the money. Now, that'll also bring your preload into spec. Running a test pattern will tell us if our pinion depth is correct. Now, a cigar-shaped pattern like this one tells us we're right on the money. The final step is to thread lock the cap bolt and torque them to 85 foot-pounds. Then we can install the spanner lock.
We'll install our new housing empty, mostly to save our backs. By the way, we're using DTS's fabricated housing with a design that extends outward to the axle tubes for additional strength. Now, it's further reinforced with these internal bulkheads. By the way, the backside is round for a nice appearance. We got ours with an optional filler and drain.
The final step in this setup was plumbing the air line for the locker, and I thought you guys might want to look at how it comes through the housing and connects to the differential. Hey man, it looks like you've been busy over here.
Well, at least one of us has been working his rear end off, literally.
Well, I haven't been exactly sitting on mine either. This thing's ready to go in.
Well, let's get that pig bolted up. Here. You know, the thing I like about a pro touring car is it does everything. Accelerates, handles, and decelerates equally well. So with that in mind, we had DTS send us this Ford Motorsports rear disc kit. Includes everything from 11-inch rotors to a built-in parking brake. Now, because of the caliper's small diameter piston, it'll work with most stock master cylinders. Oh, and this Locar cable kit here will keep our parking brake working. First, position the disc brake backing plate, then slide the axles into place, cinch down the retaining bolts, then install the rotor and the caliper. Well, now we have to replumb the brakes and bleed them once we're finished.
Hey, with that rear end mounted, we're ready for some shocks. Now, this pro touring pony is going to see a lot of different driving conditions, so we're going to use Edelbrock's IS shocks with internal valving that adjust instantly to those changes. Do it.
Hey, not so fast. We still got to slam in this new drive shaft. Now, this one's a full 3-inch diameter steel piece with larger U-joints to match the yoke on our rear end.
With the Mustang back on the ground, we can go ahead and mount the compressor for that locker. Now, we're going to put it right here in the trunk so it'll stay dry and away from the heat.
All right, well, that does it for our rear end swap. By the way, everything we used on this project will cost you about $3,800. Plan to spend a whole weekend on it, though, and that includes time to run down parts.
Yeah, but you know what? We could have saved ourselves some time if we'd had DTS pre-assemble everything for us. Now, what do you say we finish installing this compressor so we can get our rears in gear and take this thing for a drive.
Hey, I'm for that. We'll be back after a short break and a short drive. Hey, move it back a little bit. Hey, like you're racing heads up? Hey, who doesn't? Get ready for another NSCA shootout here in the heart of Mid-America. And we're about to answer the question, what's so super about Super Street? Nestled in the cornfields of Cordova, Illinois is an unsuspecting little stretch of road just over a quarter-mile long. It's Cordova Raceway Park, and the track heats up with boiling rubber from the fastest street cars in the world. From the ultra-modified Pro Class to the blast from the past of nostalgia cars, the top street machines come together to fight it out for the championships. And in no other class is the competition as hot as in Super Street. This class combines a stock look with the performance for speed.
It's very competitive. You pretty much have to run a 20 or better to win anything.
The 20 means an 820 ET, and that means 170 miles an hour in the quarter. That's fast, but not fast enough for Jim Huber in his S10 Extreme, running just over 7 seconds at 177 miles an hour. Jim knows a little about speed, taking last year's Super Street Championship title. But winning isn't the only reason he races in this class.
I think the biggest aspect of it is more of a street car look. You know, like say this truck here, it looks like an extreme truck except for the hood and the wing. And like everybody else's cars, they all look like street cars. Super Street is a more down-to-earth class.
Down to earth until you catch 3 feet of air under the front wheels, like Rick Rosati in his Super Street Camaro. Rick's had this car since he was 16. It's not quite stock anymore, but even with all the modifications, it is street legal.
Basically, I could drive this car on the street. I mean, it's a little radical, you know, but it's got functioning headlights, you know, turn signals, all the things you would have to have on a street car.
Yes, these cars can be driven on the street, but who wants to take them to the grocery store when you can burn rubber?
It's basically a 10-inch tire class, 3,000 pounds minimum weight, mufflers, headlights, whole 9 yards on street legal equipment.
Jimmy's been doing well this year, and with a strong finish in this race, he'll take points leader. He's got the setup to do it with a 406 Chevy small block and a nitrous bottle in the back. Most racers are using nitrous to get extra horses, but in almost every class, they have the option to use a turbo or a blower. And if you want to see the biggest, baddest turbo at Cordova, then go no further than this tweaked Camaro. Lawrence Connolly tweaked his motor with a precision turbo that puts out 21 pounds of boost, making an incredible 2,100 horsepower. Need proof? Well, Lawrence took #1 qualifier in Pro Street with a run just under 7 seconds at 207 miles an hour.
Turbocharging really makes nice power. It's the only motor we have, so we need to have a package that'll last us a whole year. And it's proved to be reliable.
All those horses will wreck the competition, but that power comes with a price, one that puts a dent in your pocketbook.
The negative thing about going turbocharged is the initial cost. The power plant and all the peripherals cost about 1/3 more than a nitrous motor.
The turbos are about to prove their worth in the finals, going up against the king of nitrous, Pat Musey, who is pretty relaxed before the challenge.
We're just going to go up and run our race, you know. If we run good, we're hard to beat, you know, but anything can happen. I don't take anybody for granted. We're going to throw it at it and see what happens.
Lawrence had no worries about the turbos doing their job, but in the semifinal round, a clutch problem appeared that just had to be fixed.
We weren't getting the tires to stick, so we softened the clutch a little bit in an effort to get the car out, and as it turned out, we softened it too much.
As Lawrence and his crew worked on the clutch, the finals for Super Street were taking place. It would be the former champion Jim Huber going up against the current points leader Jimmy Blackman. The race started off with a 60-foot wheel stand from the Extreme S10, and in the end, Jim took the win light. The finals were close to an end as Pat Musey and Lawrence Connolly came to the line in a nitrous versus turbo shootout. But unfortunately, the race was over before it began. That loose clutch caused a red light for Lawrence and his tweaked turbos.
Close but no cigar. As I mentioned earlier, you know, Pat had a lot left. We did as well. Our clutch change didn't do what we wanted. We'll get him next time.
Horsepower TV's Quick Tech is brought to you by Wyotech.
Welcome back to Horsepower TV. You know, true high performance isn't just about going fast anymore. A well-built street machine is one that starts, steers, and stops equally well. You know, I'm always amazed at how many of you guys will come up to me and tell me how much horsepower you have, but hey, nobody ever gives me their 60 to 0 times. So let's talk about brakes today. Now, a modern disc brake system consists of a rotor and a caliper that work together to turn forward motion or kinetic energy into heat. Now, the rotor is the device that stores that heat until it can be dispelled into the atmosphere. So it's important that you match the rotor size to the type of work it's going to be doing. Speed, vehicle weight, and driving conditions all determine your rotor needs. Hey, I don't care what they say, size does matter, especially when it comes to rotors. But equally important is the rotor design and how it's attached to the hub. Now, our friends at Bear sent us this assortment of rotors so we could show you the differences. First up is a cast iron 12-inch rotor with an integral hub. Now, this is a nice upgrade for most street applications, but it's less than an inch thick and it has straight vanes for cooling. Now, both those things affect its ability to store and dissipate heat. This next one, on the other hand, is over an inch thick so it can store more heat, and it has curved vanes for improved heat dissipation. Now, if you like straightening out a twisty road, well, this one will give you improved fade resistance. Next is a 13-inch rotor with an aluminum hub. It's lighter, and the increased diameter improves your leverage for more efficient braking. Now, during the braking process, a gas is created by the pad material rubbing against the rotor, and this one's been drilled to allow those gases to escape and keep the pad in full contact. If you've got an aggressive driving style and occasionally make a trip to the road course, hey, this is the rotor for you. Finally, a rotor for an all-out race car. Now, this 15-inch monster employs all the latest tricks and is capable of repeated, accurate, high-speed stops.
Hey, I hate to break in, but you forgot to mention that high-performance brakes also need a high-temp bearing grease, or like this grease here that Redline makes. And what about calipers and pads?
Well, that's a whole nother subject, one that we'll talk about next week.
If you're taking your small block Ford to the limit, well, now you can bolster its bottom end with this main cap girdle from TrickFlow. It connects all the main caps to minimize deflection and accommodates strokes up to 3.5 inches. ARP fasteners are part of the package in this setup that'll set you back about $200.
My partner tells me I've got a big mouth, but hey, I think this one has me beat. Holley's Avenger throttle body is available in sizes up to this monstrous 95 millimeter that flows 1,000 CFM and fits most 86 to 93 5-liter Fords with either stock or aftermarket intakes. Now, there's a little bit of outlay, about $300.
Where there's heat, there's wire. In your engine compartment, that is. But these high-temperature sleeves from Moroso can protect your plug wires from extreme header heat. Made of Nextel, they just slide over your boots like this for protection up to 2,300 degrees. Of course, you'll have to turn loose up some cold cash, about 36 singles for a pair.